All right, so welcome to our deep dive. Today we're prepping you for an exciting career, getting you ready for a sensory scientist interview.
Definitely a fascinating field. These are the folks who shape our everyday experiences with flavor and fragrance. They're like the architects of deliciousness and captivating scents.
Absolutely. And to give you a real advantage, we're going to tackle actual interview questions from RoleCatcher. Their platform is awesome, by the way. Over 120,000 interview questions, AI feedback to fine-tune your answers, even video practice to really nail your delivery.
It's like having a personal coach right there in your pocket.
Exactly. So first up's a classic question from RoleCatcher's interview guide. Can you tell us about your experience with sensory evaluations?
This one's all about showcasing your foundation, proving you get the heart of the job.
So they're looking for familiarity with descriptive analysis, maybe experience with sensory panels.
Right on. Think back to any projects you've worked on. Maybe you developed a sensory evaluation for, I don't know, a new type of snack food. Or perhaps you've got experience training a panel to detect those subtle aromas in a fancy perfume.
Even if it was part of your coursework, it counts.
Absolutely. Highlight those techniques you've mastered, the data you've analyzed. And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can be a game changer.
Oh, how so?
Well, it analyzes the specific job description, figures out the level of experience they're after, and then helps you tailor your answer perfectly. Whether it's an entry-level or senior role, you'll hit the mark.
That's smart. So you're presenting experience that aligns with their expectations right from the get-go. Okay, question number 2. How would you design a sensory evaluation study for a new product? Now, this one really digs into the practical side of things.
It shows you can think methodically and that you understand the whole process from A to Z. It's not just knowing different methods like, say, discrimination testing or descriptive analysis. You need to choose the right method for the product and the research question at hand.
So walk them through your thinking step by step. How would you pinpoint those sensory attributes you want to measure? How about selecting and training those panelists?
And of course, never forget the importance of statistical analysis. You got to show you're data-driven, that you can extract meaningful insights from all those numbers.
Speaking of data, I was just reading in RoleCatcher's work environment section about those electronic noses and tongues. Crazy cool stuff. I think it'd be a good idea to mention those, show you're up to date on the tech side.
Absolutely. It screams forward thinking, shows you're aware of how tech is transforming sensory science. You could even mention how these technologies work with human sensory evaluations, adding another layer of objectivity.
Great point. It's about showing you're on top of the latest advancements. Now, on to question 3. How do you ensure those sensory evaluations are reliable and consistent? Sounds like meticulous scientist territory.
Precisely. Reliability and consistency are the cornerstones of sensory science. They want to see you understand how to control for biases and guarantee the validity of that precious data.
It's like being a detective for flavor,
Right.
eliminating all those variables that could mess up the results.
Exactly. You're crafting a controlled environment where the product is the only thing influencing the panelists' responses.
And RoleCatcher's career guide highlights some core abilities that are super relevant here. Things like critical thinking and quality control analysis.
Spot on. A sensory scientist isn't just a technician. They're a problem solver, thinking critically to ensure the integrity of the research.
Okay, question 4 is all about passion. How do you stay up to date on the latest sensory evaluation techniques and technologies? More than just listing conferences and journals, right?
It's about showcasing that genuine curiosity, that commitment to constant learning. Mention specific workshops you've attended, research papers that grabbed your attention, even name dropping some of those external resources from the guide, like the American Chemical Society or the Institute of Food Technologists, can make a difference.
Shows you're actively engaged with the community, that you're in the loop. Okay, before we jump into more questions, I'm curious about you, our listener. What stood out so far? Any question making you think, oh, I need to really nail that one? We'll be back in a jiffy to tackle even more, so stay tuned.
Okay, so back to those interview questions. Let's say question 5 from RoleCatcher's guide. It asks, can you explain the difference between descriptive and affective sensory evaluations? A real classic, this one. Truly testing your grasp of the fundamental.
Yeah, it's about separating those objective qualities of a product from the subjective responses they trigger.
Exactly. Descriptive analysis, it's all about objectively describing those sensory attributes. Things like appearance, aroma, taste, texture, sound, like drawing a sensory map of the product.
So, say you're evaluating a brand new chocolate bar. You might describe its color as rich dark brown, the aroma, maybe notes of roasted nuts and caramel, texture smooth and creamy.
Perfect example. That's descriptive analysis in action. Now, flip over to effective evaluation. It's all about how people feel about those attributes, emotional responses, preferences, do they accept it or not? So for that same chocolate, you'd ask, do you like it? How much? What words describe your experience?
So it's like you describe the chocolate's texture objectively, but then you ask someone, hey, do you find this pleasantly smooth or, I don't know, weirdly gritty?
You got it. Understanding that difference is key for designing effective evaluations and making sense of the results.
Makes sense. All right, question 6 throws a curveball. How do you handle conflicting sensory data? Ooh, that sounds like a real-world challenge every sensory scientist has probably faced at some point.
Happens all the time. And it's a golden opportunity to show off those analytical skills, your problem-solving prowess. Imagine your sensory evaluation spits out data that's pointing in two different directions. Some panelists love the aroma, others find it totally off-putting. What's your next move?
It's a flavor mystery. Got to put on your detective hat and follow those conflicting clues. Don't panic, that's rule number 1. And then explain your process step by step. Would you look for biases in the data? Maybe the panelists weren't trained properly or the samples had an issue. Would you run more evaluations, gather more data?
This is also a chance to showcase those core abilities RoleCatcher mentions in their guide, things like judgment and decision-making. You're showing them you can weigh the evidence, make a smart call, and explain your reasoning clearly.
Couldn't agree more. It's not about having the right answer. It's about showing a thoughtful, systematic approach to tackling problems.
Now, question 7 takes us back to Sensory Science 101. Can you explain the concept of sensory threshold?
A fundamental concept, this one. Got to be able to define it crisply. Sensory threshold is the minimum level of a stimulus that can be detected. So for taste, it's that lowest concentration of a substance that registers as sweet, sour, salty, or bitter.
Gotcha. But how would you explain that to an interviewer, in a way that connects and shows you really grasped its implications? Real-life examples always work wonders. Imagine developing a low-sugar drink. You're aiming for that sweet taste, but with less sugar than the usual suspects. You need to know the sensory threshold for sweetness, right? Find that sweet spot, the lowest concentration that still delivers a perceptible sweetness.
Great example. You've shown you understand how sensory thresholds play a role in product development, optimizing those flavor profiles, meeting those consumer expectations.
Precisely. Okay, let's move on to question 8. How do you ensure those sensory evaluations happen in a controlled environment? Sounds basic, but it's super important for scientific rigor.
Yeah, you're minimizing those external factors that could throw off the panelist's perception, making sure the product is the only thing being judged.
Think about all the things that mess with our senses. Lighting, temperature, noise, even stray aromas in the room. You got to show you understand how to create a neutral, controlled space.
Oh, and remember that RoleCatcher's work environment section. It mentioned some companies even have dedicated sensory booths, entire labs to control these factors. Worth mentioning that, show you've done your homework.
Definitely a good detail to slip in. You can tie it back to those core abilities from the career guide too, like attention to detail and planning and organizing. Creating that controlled space, it demands careful planning, a meticulous eye for every detail.
Now, question 9 delves into the mysteries of human perception again. Can you explain the concept of sensory adaptation?
Fascinating stuff. This is about how our senses adjust when constantly exposed to a stimulus. Think about walking into a room, strong perfume hanging in the air. At first, it's overpowering, but after a while, you hardly notice it. That's sensory adaptation doing its thing.
So how does this factor into being a sensory scientist?
Well, you got to be mindful of how it could skew your results. Say you're evaluating the spiciness of different chilies. If your panelists are tasting spicy samples back to back, their sensitivity might drop. They might miss those subtle differences.
So you might need to throw in some breaks, maybe some palate cleansers to keep those senses sharp.
Exactly. Understanding human perception, it's all about designing your evaluations to account for those quirks.
Last but not least, question 10. Can you discuss a time when you had to troubleshoot a sensory evaluation study? Everyone loves a good problem-solving story, right? Here's your chance to share one.
It's all about showcasing that resilience, that ability to think on your feet. Think back to a time when a study went sideways. Maybe a panelist bailed at the last minute or the equipment decided to act up. How did you spot the problem? What did you do to fix it? And most importantly, what lesson did you learn?
Focus on the process, the steps you took, the decisions you made, the outcome. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing you can handle those curveballs like a pro.
Absolutely. And don't forget, RoleCatcher's got a treasure trove of these real-life questions. Keep exploring, keep practicing those answers.
We've covered a ton today, from the ins and outs of being a sensory scientist to mastering those tricky interview questions. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's talk about how RoleCatcher's AI can really elevate your prep. Ready to see how tech can give you an edge?
It really can. We've talked about tailoring those answers, right?
Yeah.
Showing you get the field. But RoleCatcher's AI, it's like next-level guidance, personalized feedback, and all that.
A personal coach in your pocket, like we said.
Mm,
We mentioned how it analyzes those job descriptions, helps you shape your responses, but it goes even deeper. Remember those, was it 120,000 interview questions?
a ton of them.
The AI can help you build strong answers, pulling from your CV, highlighting your best experiences.
And it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, right? RoleCatcher's AI, it gives feedback on your delivery, your tone, your pacing, even body language. Like a virtual mock interview with a sensory science pro, pinpointing areas to polish, helping you ooze confidence.
So you can practice, get feedback, refine, until you're ready to knock those questions out of the park. A secret weapon for your job hunt.
What's impressive to me is how it uses, natural language processing, really gets the nuances of language to give tailored feedback, not just a generic once over, it's personal, based on your skills and what you've done.
It's pretty amazing how technology is changing the whole career game. It's about giving you the power to put your best foot forward, show off what makes you you.
That's what makes you stand out in a crowded field, right?
Yeah.
Not just having the right qualifications on paper. It's about that passion, those insights, connecting with the interviewer, human to human.
So we've explored a lot today. The world of sensory science, those make-or-break interview questions, the power of AI in your career toolkit.
Before we wrap this up, I want to leave you with something to chew on. We've talked about sensory science in, food, drinks, cosmetics, the usual suspects. But where else could those skills be a game changer? Think about it. Sensory experiences are everywhere. What about healthcare? Sensory feedback could help design better, more user-friendly medical devices. Or architecture, even. Understanding how people experience spaces that could lead to more engaging, inclusive designs.
The possibilities are mind-blowing. So as you prep for those interviews, don't just stick to the obvious. Think big, explore those less conventional paths, let that passion and curiosity shine.
And remember, RoleCatcher's got your back every step of the way, giving you the insights and tools to nail that interview, kickstart that dream career in sensory science.
Best of luck on your journey. Go out there, show them what you've got, make your mark on the world of sensory experiences,